Hey folks, how are you today? Welcome back to the channel. And so, you want to buy a Fatboy. That's what this video is about today. I'm going to go through a few things about the Fatboy you might want to know going into getting one. I'd like to think I have a good idea about the Fatboy, seeing as how I've owned 4 so far. I had an Evo Fatboy, a couple of twin cam Fatboys, an M8 Fatboy. But let's get to it. We're going to try and stick to more model specific things about the bike. So let's get to her. So the Fatboy came out in 1990. It's been around for 33 years. It is a iconic member of the Softail family. It was in Terminator 2. It got a lot of popularity out of that. And it started off with an 80 cubic inch Evo engine. We moved into the twin cams come the turn of the millennium. And we got the 88 twin cam, the 96, the 103, and then we went into the M8s where we started at a 107 and now a 114. We also had a few iterations of the Fatboy. We had the CVO Fatboy. We had the Fatboy S with the 110 Screaming Eagle engine, as well as we had the Fatboy Low, and of course, the 30th anniversary Fatboy that came out in 2020, and that's the all blacked out model. Now, one of the first things I've been asked was, is this a bike for beginners? Should I get this bike for my first bike? And my answer would be no. If you want my opinion, you should start off on something much lighter, much smaller, possibly a Sportster. That's what I started with anyway. But that being said, if you have the money and you really want to go out and do it, go for it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Another thing about this bike is the weight. It is a fairly heavy cruiser. It comes in around 700 pounds wet weight. That means full of gas, full of oil, and ready to roll. The good thing about this bike, I guess being heavy, is it has a lower center of gravity, so it actually is not that hard to lift off the kickstand. So one of the things that makes a Fatboy is the fat tires. This bike, no matter which model you're looking at, always had the fatter tires as well as the solid wheels, for the most part anyway. Right now, the bike comes with a 160 front tire and a 240 back tire. Now, these big fat tires are a definite reason why this bike is not something I would recommend for a new rider, because this bike will go very well in a straight line, but it's not going to be good for very tight turns. Now, while we're on the subject of tires, the Fatboy these days comes out with the Michelin Scorchers. And these tires I have not been impressed with. If you live somewhere like Canada, where you have a riding season about 6-7 months, you can pretty much expect to go through a set of tires every second season. If you live somewhere like the southern states and you're riding year-round, I would expect to go through a set of tires every year if you do any decent amount of riding. The other thing about these tires that I found strange is that they seem to wear out in the front before the rear. Now, other Fatboys I've had with other tires, they've always wore out in the rear long before the front, and that would be because the torque is to the rear tire. The front tire just rolls. Another thing about the tires, especially on this Fatboy, is they wear unevenly, or on mine they did, and I've heard from a lot of different people that it seems to be a common issue. The front tire seems to have uneven tire wear, and you can expect to have that possibly if you go with a Fatboy. Now, of course, one of the problems with replacing tires and having uneven wear on tires is that they are going to cost. These big fat tires are not cheap. You can expect to spend at least around here, easily $1,000 or more if you are getting new tires and having the dealership replace them for you. Now let's get into comfort. Fatboy comes with footboards and forward controls. So for a guy like me who's around 6 feet tall, it's quite comfortable for my legs as far as the seating position goes. Now, the same comfort-wise cannot be said about the seat. I have never, ever been on a stock Harley Fatboy seat anyway, where my ass was not sore within 20 to 30 minutes. The seat does not look bad. However, it really leaves a lot to be desired in the comfort area. I could say that compared to my lowrider there under the cover, that seat is incredibly comfortable compared to the Fatboy seat. And you would think that the Fatboy, being supposedly a more premium model, would have a better seat, but it does not. So you may want to leave a little money in your budget for a much better, more comfortable seat. Now, depending on your height, like I said, I am around 6 feet tall. You may find the handlebar height a little too low. I found myself kind of hunched over too much with the regular stock bars. So I would advise possibly getting a little bit higher bars, maybe higher risers, maybe some mini apes. I'm a fan of ape hangers. I just like the way they look. But the other thing about them is they really help my posture so that I'm sitting up in a more straight position and takes a little bit of the pressure off my lower back. Now, the suspension on the new Fatboys is way better than the previous to 2018 models. With the monoshock, it is much better in the rear than the older Fatboys. That being said, I still think the front suspension could use some work. It still feels pretty stiff to me. It's obviously not something that has inverted forks, but they could do way better on the front suspension, if you ask me. The one good thing about the Fatboy is that it does come with an external dial. You can dial in that rear monoshock on the fly. Now, the Fatboy is basically a stripped down cruiser. It doesn't come with a lot of bells and whistles. There's no saddlebags, there's no windshield, and these are some things that you might want to buy or consider getting if you're planning on taking this bike on trips. And I have been asked in the past also, is this a bike you can tour on? As far as I'm concerned, you can tour on any bike if you put your mind to it. Look at what people were riding around the country on back in like the 60s and 70s. Any bike from nowadays is good to tour on. I have taken Fatboys through the Rocky Mountains to the West Coast, through the Canadian Shield to the East. You can tour on any bike, and you can especially tour on a properly set up Fatboy. Now, I said I wanted to stay model specific in this video. However, there are a few things I will just say that aren't necessarily specific to the Fatboy, but they are to older models. So if you are looking at a Fatboy with an Evolution engine, have a look at the rocker box covers. I have never had an Evolution engine that did not have rocker box cover leaks. However, that's pretty easy to repair. It's just a set of gaskets, but just something to look at. Another thing, if you have a bike, especially the Evo ones, that is over 30,000 miles, you might want to have a look at the primary chain tensioner shoe. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to see that when you're going to look at the bike, but I'm assuming you're going to test ride it and you will know if something's wrong with that primary chain. I've had them where they have split after mileage that high, so it's just a matter of pulling off the cover. It's just a plastic shoe. That would be one of the first things I would check when I got the bike home. Another thing is the early twin cams up to around 2006. They had some issues with the cam chain tensioner. It had a tendency to wear out, come apart, and you don't want to be screwing up your engine. So if you're buying a bike of that vintage, ask the owner if he has done the cam chain tensioner. If he has not, that is definitely something you're going to want to do as soon as possible, just to be on the safe side. Again, if you're test riding it, you're obviously going to know if something's, totally wrong with it, but these are a few things I would have a look at if you're looking at buying an older model. Now, when you're buying a Fatboy, or really any Harley for that matter, you've also got to take into consideration, of course, your taxes, your surcharge, the first service, but you're going to have to look at probably some accessories, some add-ons, at least with the new bikes. You're usually going to go for that. Most people do, and it's going to cost. For example, on my bike, I had windshield, ape hangers, mustache engine guard with highway pegs. I had a high flow air cleaner, tune, Vance and Hines slip-ons, and a swing arm bag. All that stuff is going to add up big time. So make sure you've got money in your budget if you are looking to do those things. So I've looked at a few things in this video that you should be thinking about when you buy a Fatboy. I'm sure there are many others that are even more model specific to the different models of the Fatboy, but we don't have 3 or 4 hours to go through this, and I'm not going to bore you with all that. But I didn't do this video to dissuade anybody from buying a Fatboy. The Fatboy is my favorite motorcycle. It's my favorite Harley model, and I wish I still had one, and I may get one in the future. So if you got the money and you want to do it, you go for it, because you will not be disappointed. For now, I just got to stick with the old Lowrider S and the little Leaky Pete, the old Sportster there. But I'll use that till I get another Fatboy. But anyway, that's it for today. If I left anything out, if anybody can think of things that other people need to know about buying a Fatboy, leave them in the comments, and we'll catch you in the next one.